Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So here are my results from my third week of using Retatrutide. This will be more of a summary of the last 7 days than a day-by-day account of all the food I eat, etc., to save you some time. And I'm doing this in the house to save me some time. But first, the 3 shout-outs. Dr. Jones, DC, is a chiropractic doctor who runs a clinic focused on obesity, weight loss, and metabolism. He's a valuable resource in discussing GLP-1 and other peptides. Adrian Cook is a fitness enthusiast who's tried a number of peptides, including Reta, and he's posted his experience with them on his channel. Last but not least is Brittany Rose. She's a woman who's lost over 115 pounds using GLP-1s, and I think it's Mounjaro. And her channel has been chronicling her last 2 years using it, and she has a lot of experience to share. With all that said, we ended the last video with me weighing in about a half a pound more than the previous week. And I think that's because in the first week I lost a lot of water weight and food weight, but in the second week I basically stabilized and my water level and food level remained roughly the same. So over that course of 2 weeks I lost about 3.5 pounds per week. And I will say in those previous 2 weeks I didn't experience almost any hunger or food noise. And that Sunday, that I did that last injection was also the day that I weighed in, and that was interesting timing. But starting out, the hunger suppression wasn't that high, but I could start to feel it build a little bit as the weeks started to progress. It's just not as dominant as it used to be by the 4th day. In other words, I'll inject on day 1, then day 2, 3, and 4 will basically take place, and I can start to feel the effects wane. Well, in that second week leading up to this third week, it didn't wane quite as much, so I could tell my serum level was getting a little bit higher. Another thing to note is I don't feel like at that point my Reta level was too high, and I'm typically taking my injection closer to about 10 o'clock at night, about an hour or 2 before I go to bed. So basically when I wake up the next day, the hunger is down a little bit more. I'm not really feeling that much of an appetite to eat anything for probably at least an hour or 2. But I don't really feel any different that next morning. I feel in complete control. And I'm still eating twice daily, but I can't really even think of snacking or even getting a third meal in that day. But at a minimum, regardless of the weight loss, the quality of improvement is noticeable, it's real, and I feel it every day. On the 17th day, towards bedtime, I started to notice a little bit of food noise, but I couldn't really put a lot of food in my stomach regardless, despite the hunger levels that I was experiencing. And I decided I would keep with the 4-day cycle of injections. That said, I'm not in a rush to get shredded. I just want to lose as much body fat as possible without going lower than my 135 total body weight, cutoff that I set for myself. But by the time my 5th injection rolled around, I was taking it a little bit earlier. So I started out taking the first 2 or 3 at about 10 o'clock at night. The 4th one I took a little bit earlier in the evening, like maybe 6 or 7. But this 5th one that I took in the middle of this third week, I ended up doing about 1:30 p.m. And that's the earliest I've ever taken Reta to this point. And honestly, I was able to notice its effects within about 3 hours. So I'm noticing, at least if I do it earlier in the day, I can start to feel those effects. Whereas opposed to if I took it at night, I wouldn't really feel it until the morning. So that was interesting. That said, as this week was starting to round out, I was starting to feel some side effects. In this case, I was feeling a hint of heartburn after that 4th injection and a tendency to burp. Though I didn't really experience what some people would call sulfur burps. They were just normal burps, and they just appeared every, maybe hour or 2. Another thing I noticed is I could really tell that my stomach was closing up in real time. If I ate slowly, I wouldn't finish my already small meals. So I gave myself a timer of about 5 minutes to make sure that I ate everything. If I didn't eat it in 5, maybe 10 minutes, I would be stuffed, and it would almost, I don't want to say hurt, but it would just be very uncomfortable to try to put anything in my mouth. Again, this wasn't nausea, this was just being super full. And at this point, I just couldn't believe how effective Reta's appetite suppression was. It was the strongest throughout the day, and I realized that my serum level, the level of Reta in my system, was very high on average, at least for me. So I started noticing more side effects as the week progressed. I'm also a touch colder than normal, on top of the heavy fullness, a handful of burps, and slight heartburn developing after a meal. That said, not all side effects were negative. There's a general feeling of satiety on every level, not just with regard to food, but a sense of satisfaction and almost boredom because there was just so little stress. I wasn't distracted or thinking about a lot of different things, and I thought that was very good. That said, my sleep was starting to be affected. There were 2 nights out of 7 that I woke up a little bit earlier than I normally do with my insomnia. But long story short, I can't imagine taking a stronger dose at this time. I just want to ride this wave of Reta in my system and see how it plays out. This may come at the expense of weight loss, but I remained symptom-free for 2 full weeks, and only in the last day or 2 of this week have I started to feel like I took just too much. So basically I've reached the limit of the amount of serum that I want in my body at this time. But I also figured out that I wanted to take advantage of this higher serum level, so I started looking into calculating what amount of Reta I had in my system at any one time. And I did this by going to Google, and I used Google's AI to essentially create a word problem that defined the dosage I was using of Reta and the frequency, and how much serum level would occur at, after each dose, when the spike of serum would be, and when the depth of it would be. So you would have essentially peaks, and in this case they don't call it valleys, they call it peaks and troughs, and that's the low point of serum level before your next injection. On day 21, the 7th day of the 3rd week, I weighed myself, which is a Sunday morning, and I ended up weighing in at 149.4 pounds. That is only 0.4 pounds higher than my lowest body weight ever recorded as an adult. And that occurred after me dieting over the course of a couple years and getting down to 149 on a carnivore diet. I was in a ketogenic state. So the interesting thing here is I wasn't in ketosis at this time. So I don't want to say carb loaded. I've been generally low carb, but that was kind of interesting to note that my current weight at the end of that 3rd week was that low. And at this rate, it looks like I'm going to reach about 140 pounds by the end of this entire experiment. And that's without me doing any strength training, at least yet, or any cardio besides, playing disc golf, 2 or 3 times a week. I typically play, once on Saturday, once on Sunday, and I might be able to play a part 2, on a Thursday evening. And while I've identified all the exercises that I plan to do, I'm going to see how this fat loss experience goes before I go to town on strength and endurance training. So let me tell you about my takeaways from this experiment at the end of week 3. I'm finally having side effects, but not all of them are negative. Side effects are typically secondary effects, but they can also be beneficial or they can be detrimental. The bad side effects are significant, but are mild. And the good side effects I didn't quite expect, and that's basically my strategy, to find that balance between too little and too much serum in my system, and to take only as much of a dose as needed at the right time. And one thing to note, the most common side effect by the people who took the highest weekly doses was nausea, followed by vomiting, then other gastrointestinal issues. So the first thing I look for as a side effect is nausea. If I get that, I definitely know the amount of serum in my system needs to be lowered until that symptom goes away, because I don't want to get onto the other symptoms. The other end of that spectrum is that I want to realize when I start to get more than hunger but cravings and food noise. If that occurs, that lets me know that I need to have another injection. And if that injection causes side effects, the dosage needs to be lowered next time. So in other words, I could be taking too much. Like I could try a 2 milligram injection because I think, oh, I'm too low, I need to catch up and get that serum level. And then maybe in a few hours I start to feel too many negative side effects. So the bottom line is, Reta won't do the work for me. I have to do the work. So it'll help me. I'm not trying to sabotage it by trying to eat while not hungry or try to get too full and overeat. I think there is a risk that it might train someone like myself to overeat, if I eat when not hungry, without the benefit of Reta, to cancel out the hunger and the food noise. And if the stomach gets empty, I might still overfill it with food that hasn't been emptied enough from the little food that I eat in the first place. And I think really that's when the feeling of being very full could transcend to becoming nausea and potentially vomiting, if I cram too much food in my stomach. So that's going to do it for this video. I had to rely on a lot of notes here to make this video as short as possible. I'm going to continue to do this, and I'll try to make my 4th video even better. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.